quite a bit over the 10 plus thousand years that we've had sedentary agriculture. Anyway, be that as it may. So 300,000 years we're hunters and gatherers. Then 10, 15,000 years ago, we start this whole new revolutionary process called agriculture, sedentary agriculture. We stay in one place and we grow food and we corral some of the animals and we breed dogs and we breed cows and sheep and all of that stuff. Right? That's the creation of civilization. And that leads directly, of course, to all of the implements of our civilization, from writing to the wheel to irrigation to all the technology. All of that comes from the agricultural revolution that started a little over 10,000 years ago. And so for whether you're talking about ancient Sumer to ancient Egypt to ancient Rome to Greece to China to any other society, to Western Hemisphere, fundamentally, they're really all the same. It's all essentially agricultural revolution stuff with the same basic technology. As I like to say, animals pulling wooden carts or human muscle power. That, you could have taken an Egyptian peasant from 5,000 years ago and dropped them into medieval France, and yeah, there'd be some culture shock, but fundamentally, that Egyptian would figure out like how to survive in French society, because it's the basic same fundamental cycle of life. You're basically dealing with animals, you're dealing with farm growing food, like that's something that they would know. But if you took that same person and dropped him into the Industrial Revolution, you might have a harder time in the age of scientific understanding, which is the third phase. And that's only the last really couple of centuries, right? So 300,000 years, then another 10 to 15,000 years, and the last 200 years of science and industry. And so for all of the time that we've existed, unless there has been a lost Atlantean civilization, let's leave that as a possibility, but I don't know. But what we know is that we haven't had any real capabilities worth commenting on until really the last couple of hundred years. And really until the last 100 years, frankly. So any visiting intelligence is really not going to be able to do a whole lot with us. Yeah, they can siphon off some of our genetic material. They can maybe take some of Earth's natural resources, although I don't see any evidence for large-scale non-human extraction of Earth's natural resources. Now, maybe there's easy places we could have overlooked, but nonetheless, we haven't seen any evidence. So I think they're interested in us. And so for the old-timers who've been here a long while, or monitoring us for a long time, there is no motivation for them to announce themselves to us. And for the newcomers, even if they've had good scouting missions beforehand and they kind of have a good heads up on what we're about, it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense for them necessarily to just come out and say, hey, let's take us to your leader. Like, not really. It would be a highly disruptive thing. What I think they all are aware of is this transformation that we're about to go now into stage 4. So I don't know about you, but I grew up just assuming that stage 3 was going to last forever, and this is where we were at. But we're moving to a 4th stage. I haven't come up with a better name for it than the transhumanist stage. I think transhumanist stage is a pretty good name for it. Although there's much more than transhumanism involved in this. And I would say even for the near term, transhumanism isn't really the dominant element of it anyway. I think the dominant element of this transformation has to do with 5G and smart technologies, because that's the piece that will create a society of no privacy. The only thing stopping complete loss of privacy will be the implementation of appropriate laws to keep, like, there's nothing that's going to be able to stop the government from knowing every single thing about you that it wants to know, if it wanted to know it. The only thing that we can hope for, I think, moving forward is a legal structure that we can put into place that will guard most citizens from excessive, intrusive, bedroom espionage by the state. But I mean, how long is that even going to last? Like, eventually, you give it another couple of generations. I think these, these laws that we want to put into place, I don't think they're going to last very long. I think they're just going to get whittled away, and we're going to move into an era of basically no privacy. So that's one important transformation of our society, and not one to take lightly. It's a huge change. But also there's other things. I mean, there's going to be more and more genetic manipulation, and I think that there's a physiological transformation that's taking place among us that's actually speeding up. So it's changing us in a lot of important ways, and it's changing our fundamental psychology, and it's siphoning out the old-timey aggression and the a lot of old initiative too. I think is all going to go away, because there just is not going to be any. I don't think there's going to be a lot of things for people to do in any traditional sense that used to give their lives meaning, like work. I just don't see that happening. So we're going through a massive transformation, and we're turning ourselves into a big ant colony as well. I think that's what's going to happen. And I would also suggest that in the long term, there's a good chance that we could expect a significant depopulation. And it doesn't have to be like someone's going to kill off the excess humanity, but realistically, all of those people that will exist, like there's not going to be anything for them to do. And if you're one of those elites looking down on the mass of people, you're either going to create your own little paradise up in like Elysium above the clouds, like in the movie, or you're going to decide we need to cull the herd, and maybe they'll do that through sterilization techniques. And of course, for those of us who've been looking at the COVID scenario, if it is true that COVID-19 results in male infertility, if that is true, as has been suggested, well then, that would be like problem solved right there, wouldn't it? Like, seriously, wouldn't it? It would be a relatively non-invasive way to reduce Earth's population. The male infertility, this is something I remembered studying even 20 years ago. Sperm counts among men in Western nations had been known already to be declining quite dramatically. I don't remember the details as much as I did when I read this 20 years ago, but sperm count is measured by, I think, density per whatever it is, and like 100,000 viable sperm is considered a good amount, and when you get lower than, I don't know, like 30 or 20, like you're in trouble. Nature gives men a lot of extra sperm so that, if one doesn't work, then the other's going to work. But when you get below a certain level, then you start having infertility problems. And so what they've noticed is that whereas the average sperm count of a healthy man from like 1940 would have been at the 100,000 level per whatever the volume, I don't know, like by the 1970s or 80s, it might have been half that, like half, something like that. And it's just gotten lower ever since. So that was already happening, from what I understood, at least among Western men. I don't know about non-Western. But with COVID, hell, if that does what has been suggested, then, well, that fixes everything from an excess population perspective. Would fit right in really well. And I wouldn't rule it out. We don't have enough information yet, but the problem that we have is we may never really get enough information to, confirm this one way or the other. We're going to be potentially left guessing for a long time, maybe forever. So anyway, culling the herd would be one important thing that a future ruling elite would probably feel like they need to do. In other words, we're moving toward a completely new and I think very controlled version of human society, where it's going to be difficult for people simply to kind of live in the free way that we like to think that we, that we like to think we ought to. I just think that that's probably going to stop in the next coming couple of generations. I think we're seeing it transform as it is right now. So this transformation might be unpleasant for someone like me or for you. But what if, and this is in my notes here and I'm remembering now, what if these extraterrestrials who've already gone through all the stages know full well that this is a stage that we are going to go through, like some inevitability. Like it might be. When you get to a certain level of technology, it could very well be that the technology dictates the society rather than the reverse. Like I often think that that's the case. Your technological development will create the society. Like the fact that we invented the internet has in its turn transformed global society. And I think future technological innovations will continue to do that. Where the heck was I going with all of this? So that these other beings would probably be able to predict where we're headed down the road. And this, I think, gets to the whole level of alien intentions. They can see where we are headed. They may be facilitating or accelerating that process. But fundamentally, I don't think that they can change it. I think that what we're doing could very well be inexorable. There's just no getting around it. And if that's true, then any of the observing ET groups probably realize this also, right? And they may have human actors within our society that are working for them, like maybe the COVID thing was released as a way to help with the depopulation of human society. Maybe that's true. Or maybe they didn't need for that to be the case because they know that the great change is coming anyway. And I use the phrase great change because this is a phrase that abductees have used, particularly Dave Jacobs folks. But also, I should double check with Yvonne Smith, but I think she also has gotten abductees who've said the same thing for her. And I think Barbara Lamb also. All of them have had people who've said, yes, we're being told that there's this big transformation happening. And the big difference is how you want to interpret that. So for a lot of the New Age crowd, a lot of the people that Barbara might be interviewing or regressing, there's definitely a greater tendency for them to look at the transformation as a positive thing. Nonetheless, it's a great transformation that they're seeing. And I now believe that they're right. There is a great transformation and that this is the transformation. So I don't think Jacobs got this one right. I don't think this is a great change, transformation, i.e. planetary takeover, like he's often has said. But I do think that these beings, and this includes hybrids/hybrids that he talks about, and it could include the old-timey human contingent that was modified 40,000+ years ago, that's probably here. And it would include any other observing non-human aliens that are kind of observing and watching us and engaging in this. Like they all probably realize that we're going through this transformation right now. And so they're just waiting, and they might be trying to position themselves optimally either within this society or not necessarily within the society, but however they're trying to do this is to position themselves in the best way possible so that when we get to a certain level of this transformation, they will be able to benefit from it. Could they benefit from it by, maybe some of them just want to live here. Maybe they want to live here. This planet, I think I was reading, in the Milky Way galaxy, it's believed that there are 6 billion Earth-like planets now. That's the latest estimate. So that is planets roughly this size, that are rocky, that are roughly the same distance from their sun, which is a similar sun to what we have. Like all of the things that make Earth, there's 6 billion of them. But, so there's probably a lot of life out there, but how many of those planets have a moon like what we have? Now, I'll bet that number might be really, really, really low. It might be 1. It might be us. Because our moon really is unusual. Like, let's face it. It's very unusual for a lot of reasons. It's big, it's close, it is my across the street neighbor. Yep. She gave us a bunch of homegrown corn not long ago. Delicious. We're going to give her some zucchini when they're ready. We're keeping the 8-pounder. Anyway, God, where the hell was I? I'm sure you're at your screen yelling at me saying, this is where you were. So, alien agendas. Oh, shit. I can't remember where I was talking about now here. Well, isn't this something? I don't want to pause this. I can pause this. Hang on. Yeah, I remember now. So this is an amazing planet to live on. Like, we have this unique moon. We've got like a remarkably stable and incredibly thriving world. Yes, I'm sure that there's life out there in the universe, but when you really look at the unbelievable abundance of life here, like this little garden is just one tiny little thing. It's like we've got this massive, beautiful planet. All the water, all these great minerals, all the wonderful plant life and the animal life, and all these remarkable combinations of genetic material just running around. All the amazing birds and fish, and like, yeah. Like I could see this planet being considered a absolute prize jewel in the whole universe. Like, this really could be. And even if it isn't a completely unique world, I'm going to guess that planets like Earth are not a dime a dozen. So I'm going to guess that this world is very attractive. And if there is an alien species that finds Earth, and they might think, great, how can we, this alien species that we are, maximize our enjoyment of planet Earth, even though we're not biologically designed to live here? Well, there's a couple of ways that they can make that happen. One is through the hybrid scenario that Jacobs talks about. That is, you create a customized version of yourself so that you can't live here, but your descendants can, because they're going to be in human form, so they'll be well suited for living here because we are designed to live here on this planet. But they'll be enough like you that will serve your purposes. So, okay. So that's one possibility, and I think that has to be taken quite seriously. But the other possibility, there are other possibilities. If they have a way of taking human form. Now, this has been something that's come up on our site recently. I guess we can call it the avatar hypothesis. But actually, when I thought about it, this is an idea that was introduced to me at least 15 years ago by Linda Moulton Howe, when I was chatting with her, and back then she told me the story like ultra secret, like don't tell anyone, but she's been telling people, so hell, motorcycle. And what Linda said was that, I can't remember when she had this conversation, but she met with this big dude who was retired from the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he essentially said to her, "Look, Linda, we have been monitoring the extraterrestrial presence on Earth here for a long time," and he essentially led her to believe that there were three fundamental groups that they were watching. So he called, I don't know if he called them the Ebens, but she calls them the Ebens. So like gray-like, short, bald-headed types. And then human/Nordic types, and then reptilian types. And one thing he said to her is that all three of them are able to look like humans. He didn't tell her how, or if he did, she didn't tell me how. So this is something that I think Linda told me this more than 15 years ago. Maybe about 15 years ago. Maybe 2005, 2006, actually. That'd be about right. So maybe that's true. And in fact, the more we understand about the physics of consciousness and maybe also like the physics of non-locality, and also if like all you have to do is posit the existence of a soul. Like if there's such a thing as a soul, which I don't know about you, but I believe in a soul. I just watched a really great documentary with Tracy the other night on life between lives, life after death. Really got into it. Fascinating. Maybe I'll talk about that sometime soon. And many of you might remember the story that I had of my father when he died, like almost 2 years ago, when the lights in my living room, just my newly installed little pot lights, ceiling lights on a dimmer setting, just went bright and dim and bright and dim and bright and dim and bright and dim and would not stop until I turned them on and off and turned off the light. And 15 minutes later, my sister called me to tell me that our dad had died 15 minutes earlier. Absolutely true. Like, sorry, that's not a coincidence. I don't know how that happened physically, in terms of physics, but I've got to think that was my dad trying to get my attention. Insane, I know. Anyway, if you believe that there is a soul, if there is one, then a lot of other things make perfect sense, all right? And if it is possible, as some accounts have given, again, some of this is Linda's research, but not just her, about the extraction of a human soul and placed into a container during abductions. This is not a new idea. This is at least 20 years old because I encountered it 20 years ago, this idea. Soul being removed, placed into a container, and for the reason, by the way, so that if you were taken by an extraterrestrial and they took your soul out, put it in a container, did their thing, your soul would not record the events that took place. And not only you would not know it, but also other aliens who might abduct you would also not know. Like, is there this element of covertness going on among ETs that are taking people? Well, I don't really know, but that's a theory that I encountered a full 2 decades ago. The point is, if soul extraction is possible, and by the way, people who've had near-death experiences always talk about having left their body and looking down at the scene, right? So what is that if not the soul leaving the body? How your eyes, how you have vision, and how you can hear things, that's a whole other thing. Without ears and without your eyes. Like, how does that work? But if you can take a soul and then put it into another human body, right? One that you make or create, well, then you could insert yourself into the society. So that's the avatar idea. And yeah, totally possible. So my point is, this is a beautiful world. It's a beautiful planet. And there could easily be motivations for other beings to want to be here. And what better time than now? We've got, if you can insert yourself into the human population that's here, and if you know how to obtain really great resources like money and power in one way or another, then with the technologies that we're developing, genetic manipulation, you could probably make yourself live for centuries, cut off the aging process, get yourself a nice house, nice pool, have caviar and champagne every day. It'd be a good life. I don't care how spiritual they might be. To have the opportunity to have a human body, to live on planet Earth in opulence and wealth for many hundreds of years, yeah, I think I would take that. And you might as well. So that could be it. What the long-term goal would be, the only sure thing that I can think of is living here, and probably living here in bodies like ours, because the fact is we have great bodies for this planet. Like, we're perfectly designed to live here on this little paradise of ours. So now, they might not be looking to do that to wipe out the rest of us. Maybe they're just looking to get a nice piece of the action and to live really well. And maybe they think, we'll run the place. Like, maybe they want to do that. If that's the case, that's kind of a scary thought, because what we're looking at right now is a world in which, again, one big ant colony. And if that's going to be their idea of a great world, I don't think it's my idea of a great world. One in which genuine opportunity for most people is just going to go away, unless they need to cull the herd. Maybe it's a really brilliant genius plan that'll take a couple of generations, and they'll reduce the human population from almost 8 billion now to, maybe they'll get it down to 500 million, half a billion, like in the Georgia Guidestones. Maybe that's what they'll want. 500,000 is, that's taking you back to like the time of the Roman Empire. That's probably when we had that many people on the planet. So we didn't hit 1 billion until around the year 1800, by all estimates. So yeah, 500 million, that's a low population. Maybe that's what they want. I think there's probably a lot of things that I missed here in my notes, but I don't know. This was probably kind of a fun hangout here with you. And I'm noticing that it's more than an hour that I've done this. Oh yeah, there's a lot that I haven't gone over. Well, good. It'll give me an opportunity to go over some other things. Yeah, I'll just leave this thought here with you. The fact that that either the extraterrestrials or someone is operating at a totally different level. And by that, I'll leave you with Skinwalker. I'll leave you with missing 411 cases. Inexplicable types of cases, right? And I'll leave you with a very lesser known researcher that I was reading earlier this year, named Harvey Rutledge, from the 1970s and 80s, who did something known as Project Identification. Rutledge lived in southern Missouri. He was a PhD academician scientist who got interested in UFOs and wanted to do a genuine, legitimate scientific observational study of them. And he had a team of grad students and people working with him. And long story short, Rutledge came away with the idea that this phenomenon was genius level sentience and had precognitive capabilities to it. So in other words, was operating at a totally different level than what we do. And I'll leave you with The Messengers by Mike Clelland, a book that I published a couple of years ago. Another book that gives you the undeniable takeaway that there is a very, very high order of intelligence that seems to be managing our reality, or if not managing it when they want to manage it. So who are they? Are they the extraterrestrials? Or are they beyond extraterrestrial? This is something I know I was asking here on this site at least once or twice in the past. And I mean, how can you not come back to it? Because it's just one of those questions that seems to be a recurring theme. Like, there's some very high strangeness that we deal with in this world, and is it ET related or not? And I don't know what the answer to that is. But be that as it may, I'll leave you with that. We'll come back to that, and the whole question of what do our human elites know? And who are our human elites? There's a lot going on there. But anyway, I see I've been doing this for 1 hour and 10 minutes, so I'm going to call it. And there's a squirrel behind me. Do you see that little leap? Look at that guy. They're just the most amazing athletes of city and suburban life. Like, no one's better than a squirrel. They're incredible. Okay, everyone, have a great night. Hang in there. Stay sane. Stay happy. Stay healthy to the best of your ability. Oh, one more thing. I'll write this down, but we're doing an AMA. I'm 99.9% sure it's going to be this Thursday. Check for the time. Tracy and I will be available for it. Members AMA. You throw some questions out there. I'll do everything I can to answer it. And questions that I don't answer, I'll save for answer forums. So that'll be fun. We haven't done an AMA in a little while. It's long overdue. Everybody, have a great night. It's good to be here with you. Hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Catch you all later. Bye-bye.